The morning sun painted the Denver airport terminal in golden light as Sarah Chen walked slowly through the busy corridors. Her hand rested on her round belly while her husband Mike carried their small suitcase. At 28 weeks pregnant, Sarah moved carefully but felt good. Her doctor had given permission for this trip to Atlanta to visit her sister Emma before the baby arrived. Sarah wore a comfortable blue dress that stretched over her growing belly. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she had a gentle smile on her face. This was her first pregnancy, and everything had gone perfectly so far. The baby kicked softly as they waited in line at the gate. Mike Chen was nervous about flying with his pregnant wife, but Sarah had convinced him everything would be fine. He was a tall man with kind eyes who worked as an accountant in Denver. He kept checking his watch and looking at Sarah to make sure she felt okay. They had been married for 3 years and were excited about becoming parents. The gate area was crowded with business travelers in suits, families with young children, and elderly couples heading to visit relatives. Sarah and Mike found 2 seats near the window where Sarah could stretch her legs. She watched the planes taking off and landing while Mike bought her a bottle of water and some crackers. Flight 447 was a Boeing 737 that would take them directly to Atlanta in about 4 hours. The airline staff called for boarding and Sarah stood up slowly. Mike held her arm gently as they walked down the jet bridge. The flight attendant smiled at them and noticed Sarah was pregnant. Jessica Martinez was the lead flight attendant on this flight. She had been working for the airline for 12 years and had seen many pregnant women travel safely. She was a friendly woman in her 30s with short brown hair and a warm smile. Jessica made a mental note to check on Sarah during the flight. Sarah and Mike had seats in row 15 by the window. Sarah liked to look out at the clouds and mountains during flights. Mike helped her get comfortable and made sure her seatbelt fit properly under her belly. The plane was almost full with about 150 passengers. In the seat across the aisle sat Maria Rodriguez, a quiet woman in her 50s. She wore a simple blue sweater and carried a worn leather purse. Maria was traveling to visit her grandchildren in Atlanta. She had 8 grandchildren and loved spending time with them. Maria opened a paperback romance novel and began reading quietly. Behind Sarah and Mike sat businessman David Walsh, who was typing on his laptop. He wore an expensive suit and seemed stressed about some work project. David barely looked up when Sarah and Mike sat down. He was too busy with his phone calls and emails. A few rows ahead sat the Johnson family with their 2 young children. Tommy was 5 years old and his sister Amy was 3. They were excited about visiting their grandparents, but the children were already getting restless. Mrs. Johnson was trying to keep them quiet while Mr. Johnson organized their carry-on bags. Dr. Robert Kim sat in the front row reading a medical journal. He was a retired dentist from Denver heading to a conference in Atlanta. Dr. Kim was a kind man in his 60s who still enjoyed learning about new medical procedures. He had no idea he would soon need to help with a medical emergency. The plane pushed back from the gate right on time. Sarah held Mike's hand during takeoff because she always felt nervous when the plane left the ground. The engines roared loudly and the aircraft climbed steeply into the blue Colorado sky. Sarah looked out the window at the Rocky Mountains getting smaller below them. Once they reached cruising altitude, the seatbelt sign turned off and passengers began moving around the cabin. Jessica started the beverage service with her cart. She stopped at Sarah's row and asked how she was feeling. Sarah smiled and said she felt fine. Jessica gave her some extra crackers and ginger ale to help with any nausea. Sarah felt comfortable and happy as the plane flew smoothly through the clear sky. She and Mike talked quietly about baby names and what color to paint the nursery. They had decided not to learn if the baby was a boy or girl because they wanted it to be a surprise. Sarah rubbed her belly gently and felt the baby moving around. Mike showed Sarah pictures on his phone of the crib they had ordered and the tiny clothes his mother had already bought for the baby. They laughed about how excited both sets of grandparents were about their first grandchild. Sarah's sister Emma was also very excited and had planned a small baby shower for this visit. The flight was peaceful for the first 2 hours. Passengers read books, watched movies on their phones, or slept quietly. The sky outside was bright blue with white clouds far below. The plane flew steadily eastward over Kansas and Missouri. Sarah had gotten up twice to walk to the bathroom because the baby was pressing on her bladder. This was normal during pregnancy and she felt fine each time. Mike offered to get her a pillow from the overhead bin, but Sarah said she was comfortable. Enough. Then everything changed very suddenly. Sarah was looking out the window at the farmland below when she felt a sharp pain in her lower back. At first she thought it was just from sitting too long. She shifted in her seat and tried to get more comfortable. The pain went away after a few seconds. 10 minutes later, the pain came back stronger. This time it started in her back and wrapped around to her belly like a tight belt. Sarah gripped the armrest and took a deep breath. The pain lasted about 30 seconds, then faded away. Sarah tried not to worry. She had read that false labor pains were common during pregnancy. Her doctor had told her that real labor pains would be regular and get stronger over time. These pains were probably nothing serious. But 15 minutes later, another wave of pain hit her even harder. This time, Sarah couldn't stay quiet. She made a small sound, and Mike immediately noticed something was wrong. He saw her face was pale and she was gripping the armrest very tightly. "Sarah, what's happening?" Mike asked with concern in his voice. "Are you okay?" Sarah tried to smile, but another pain was already starting. This one was the strongest yet and lasted almost a minute. When it ended, Sarah looked at Mike with fear in her eyes. "Mike," she whispered urgently, "I think something is wrong. These pains are coming too fast and they hurt too much. I think the baby might be coming." Mike's face went white with shock and fear. They were still thousands of feet in the air with more than 2 hours left before landing. This could not be happening now. Mike stared at his wife with complete terror in his eyes. His hands started shaking as he tried to process what Sarah had just told him. The baby was coming now, 30,000 feet above the ground with nowhere to land for hours. This was his worst nightmare coming true. Sarah gripped Mike's arm so tightly her fingernails dug into his skin. Another contraction was building and she could feel it getting stronger. She tried to breathe slowly like she had learned in their pregnancy classes, but the pain was overwhelming. This was nothing like what she had imagined childbirth would feel like. The contraction peaked and Sarah let out a low moan that she tried to keep quiet. She did not want to alarm the other passengers, but the pain was too intense to stay completely silent. Several people in nearby seats turned to look at her with curious expressions. Mike pressed the call button above their seats with a shaking finger. The little light blinked red and he pressed it again and again. Where was the flight attendant when they needed help most? His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Jessica Martinez was serving drinks 3 rows ahead when she noticed the call light. She had been working on planes long enough to recognize different types of passenger emergencies. Something about the urgent blinking pattern made her abandon her cart and hurry toward row 15 immediately. When Jessica reached Sarah and Mike, she could see right away this was serious. Sarah's face was flushed and covered with sweat. Her breathing was fast and shallow. Mike looked like he might faint at any moment. Jessica had seen pregnant women feel sick on flights before, but this was clearly something much worse. "What can I help you with?" Jessica asked in her professional voice, though inside she was starting to feel worried. "My wife is having labor pains," Mike said in a voice that cracked with fear. "They started about 30 minutes ago and they are getting stronger and closer together. I think she might be having the baby right now." Jessica felt her stomach drop. In 12 years of flying, she had dealt with heart attacks, broken bones, and panic attacks, but never a woman giving birth. She looked at Sarah, who was breathing hard and preparing for another contraction. "How far along are you in your pregnancy?" Jessica asked Sarah gently. 28 weeks, Sarah managed to say between breaths. "The baby is not supposed to come for 2 more months. Something is very wrong." Jessica's training kicked in immediately. She needed to contact the cockpit and see if there was any medical help on board. She also needed to keep Sarah as calm as possible while figuring out how to handle this emergency. "I am going to call the captain right now," Jessica told them. "Try to stay calm and keep breathing slowly. We are going to take care of you." Jessica walked quickly to the galley area and picked up the phone that connected directly to the cockpit. Captain Williams answered on the first ring. "Captain, we have a medical emergency in the cabin," Jessica said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Passenger in seat 15A is in premature labor. The baby appears to be coming now." There was silence on the other end for a moment. Captain Williams had been flying for 25 years, but had never dealt with a birth on his aircraft. "What is our nearest airport for emergency landing?" he asked his co-pilot. "Kansas City is about 90 minutes away," came the reply. "Denver is behind us about the same distance." Captain Williams made a quick decision. "Jessica, I am going to make an announcement asking for medical personnel. We will also request priority landing in Kansas City. Keep the passenger as comfortable as possible." The captain's voice came over the intercom system throughout the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a medical situation on board. If there is a doctor, nurse, or anyone with medical training, please press your call button immediately. We appreciate your cooperation." The announcement sent a ripple of anxiety through the passengers. People started looking around nervously, trying to figure out what was happening. Some passengers took out their cell phones to text family members even though they had no signal at this altitude. David Walsh, the businessman behind Sarah and Mike, looked up from his laptop for the first time during the flight. He could hear Sarah making sounds of pain and realized she must be the medical emergency. He felt uncomfortable and wished he had chosen a different seat. Mrs. Johnson covered her children's ears as Sarah let out another cry of pain. 5-year-old Tommy asked his mother why the lady was making those sounds. Mrs. Johnson did not know how to explain what was happening to such young children. 3. Call buttons lit up almost immediately after the announcement. Dr. Robert Kim in the front row was the first to respond. He closed his medical journal and walked back toward the commotion. Even though he was a retired dentist, he had some medical training that might be helpful. A woman in row 8 also pressed her call button. Linda Chen was a veterinarian who had delivered many animal babies, but had never helped with a human birth. She was nervous but willing to try if no one else was available. The third person to respond was college student Amy Foster, who was studying nursing. She was only in her second year of school and had never seen a real birth, but she knew basic first aid and wanted to help if possible. Jessica quickly gathered the 3 volunteers near Sarah's seat. Dr. Kim took one look at Sarah and could see she was in active labor. Her contractions were coming every few minutes now and lasting longer each time. "We need to prepare for the possibility that this baby is coming right now," Dr. Kim told the group quietly. "Do we have any medical supplies on board?" Jessica nodded. "We have a basic first aid kit, but nothing for delivering babies. I can get clean towels and blankets. There should be some hot water available from the coffee service." Sarah felt another contraction starting, and this one was the strongest yet. She could not sit upright anymore and needed to change positions. Mike helped her lean forward while she gripped the seat in front of her. The people sitting in front of Sarah turned around to stare. An elderly woman looked shocked and whispered to her husband that this was very improper. A teenage boy took out his phone and started recording until his mother made him put it away. "I can feel something happening," Sarah gasped as the contraction ended. "The baby is moving down. This is really happening right now." Dr. Kim looked at Jessica with concern. They were still over an hour from landing, and Sarah's labor was progressing very quickly. They needed to prepare for an emergency delivery at 30,000 feet with no proper medical equipment. "We need to clear some space and get more help," Dr. Kim said. "This baby is coming whether we are ready or not." Dr. Robert Kim knelt beside Sarah's seat and tried to look confident, but inside he felt completely lost. As a retired dentist, he knew about teeth and gums, not about delivering babies. He had never even seen a birth before except in medical school textbooks 30 years ago. His hands trembled slightly as he tried to remember anything useful from his old medical training. Linda Chen, the veterinarian, stood nearby, feeling just as nervous. She had helped many animals give birth on farms and in her clinic, but human babies were completely different. She worried that what worked for cows and horses might not be right for people. Linda wished she had paid more attention during the one obstetrics class she took in veterinary school. Amy Foster, the nursing student, was the most nervous of all. She was only 20 years old and had never seen a real emergency before. In her classes, they practiced on plastic dummies, but this was a real woman with a real baby coming. Amy's textbooks were in her backpack, but she knew there was no time to look up what to do. Sarah cried out again as another contraction hit her. This one was stronger than all the others and lasted almost 2 minutes. She could not sit in her seat anymore and needed to move around. Mike helped her stand up in the narrow aisle where she could lean against the seats for support. The 3 volunteers looked at each other with growing panic. They had volunteered to help, but none of them really knew what to do. Dr. Kim had only delivered one baby during his medical internship, and that was with a full team of doctors and nurses helping him. This situation was completely different. "Maybe we should just try to keep her comfortable until we land," Linda suggested quietly. "I don't think any of us should try to deliver the baby without proper equipment." Amy nodded in agreement. "In nursing school, they taught us that emergency births can be very dangerous. Maybe it would be safer to wait for the paramedics on the ground. But Sarah was not going to be able to wait. Another contraction started before the last one had completely ended. She grabbed onto Mike's shoulders and made a sound that scared everyone around her. The baby was coming whether they were ready or not. The other passengers were getting more anxious as they watched the scene unfold. Some people moved to seats farther away because they did not want to be involved. Others crowded closer trying to see what was happening. A few passengers were recording with their phones until Jessica firmly told them to put the cameras away. David Walsh, the businessman, finally closed his laptop and moved to a different seat. He could not concentrate on work with all the noise and drama happening right behind him. He wished the flight attendants would do something to handle this situation more quietly. Mrs. Johnson was trying to distract her children, but 5-year-old Tommy kept asking why the lady was yelling. 3-year-old Amy started crying because she was scared by all the adult voices sounding worried. Mr. Johnson suggested they ask the flight attendant if they could move to different seats. That was when Maria Rodriguez quietly stood up from her seat in row 12. Throughout all the commotion, Maria had been sitting calmly with her paperback romance novel. She was a small woman with gray hair pulled back in a simple bun. She wore a blue cardigan sweater and comfortable walking shoes. Most passengers had not even noticed her during the flight because she was so quiet and unassuming. But Maria had been listening carefully to everything happening around Sarah's seat. She had heard the panic in the volunteers' voices and could tell they did not really know what to do. Maria closed her book, placed it neatly in the seat pocket, and walked slowly toward the group of people surrounding Sarah. "Excuse me," Maria said in a soft but clear voice. "I think I can help with this situation." Dr. Kim looked up at the small woman and felt a moment of hope. "Are you a doctor or nurse?" he asked hopefully. Maria shook her head with a gentle smile. "No, I am not medically trained, but I am a grandmother of 8 children. I have been present at many births, and I helped deliver 3 of my own grandchildren when there was no time to get to the hospital." The 3 volunteers looked at each other uncertainly. They had medical training, but no experience. Maria had no official training, but lots of real experience. Dr. Kim made a quick decision. "What do you think we should do?" he asked Maria, feeling relieved to let someone else take charge. Maria stepped closer to Sarah and spoke to her in a calm, reassuring voice. "Hello, dear. My name is Maria Rodriguez. I know you are scared, but I want you to look at me and listen to my voice. I am going to help you bring your baby safely into this world." Something about Maria's gentle confidence immediately made Sarah feel less panicked. Maria's brown eyes were kind and steady. Her voice was soothing like a grandmother talking to a frightened child. Sarah nodded and tried to focus on Maria instead of the pain. "First, we need to make you more comfortable," Maria told Jessica. "Can you clear the seats in this middle section so she has more room? We will need clean towels, blankets, and hot water if you can get it." Jessica immediately started moving the few passengers who were sitting in the middle seats nearby. She asked other flight attendants to bring every clean towel and blanket they had on the plane. The coffee service could provide hot water in bottles and cups. Maria knelt down beside Sarah and gently felt her belly. She had done this many times before with her own daughters and daughters-in-law. She could tell the baby was in the right position and moving down quickly. "The baby is coming very soon," Maria announced to the group. "Maybe in the next 30 minutes. We cannot wait for landing, so we need to prepare right now." Dr. Kim felt both relieved and nervous that someone was taking charge. "What can we do to help?" he asked. "I need you to help keep the other passengers calm and give us privacy," Maria told him. "Amy, you can help Jessica get supplies. Linda, I might need your help because you have experience with births even if they were animals." Maria turned back to Sarah, who was breathing hard between contractions. "I need to check how far along you are," Maria explained gently. "I know this is not comfortable, but I have to see how close the baby is to being born." Sarah nodded and let Maria examine her. Maria's face showed she was concerned, but trying to stay calm. The baby was coming much faster than normal. There would not be time to land the plane before this little one arrived. "We need to work quickly," Maria told the group. "This baby does not want to wait any longer." Maria Rodriguez looked around at the supplies Jessica had quickly gathered from around the airplane. There were several clean white towels from the first-class bathroom, 2 soft blue blankets that passengers used for sleeping, and 3 bottles of hot water from the coffee service. It was not much compared to what hospitals had, but Maria had worked with less when her own grandchildren were born at home. Sarah was now lying across 3 seats that Jessica had cleared in the middle section of the plane. The armrests had been lifted up to make a flat surface like a narrow bed. Sarah's head rested on a pillow while Mike held her hand tightly. Her contractions were coming every 2 or 3 minutes now and lasting longer each time. "The baby is almost ready," Maria announced to the small group helping her. "I can see the head starting to show. This little one does not want to wait for anything." Dr. Kim stood nearby ready to help with whatever Maria needed. Even though he was supposed to be the medical expert, he felt much better letting Maria take charge. She moved with confidence and seemed to know exactly what to do in this impossible situation. Amy Foster, the nursing student, was holding clean towels and trying not to look nervous. She had never seen a real birth before and was amazed by how calm Maria remained. In her textbooks, emergency births always seemed scary and dangerous, but Maria made it look like the most natural thing in the world. Linda Chen, the veterinarian, watched Maria's technique carefully. She recognized the same gentle but firm approach she used when helping animals give birth. Maria's hands were steady and sure as she checked on Sarah's progress. The other passengers had been moved to different parts of the plane to give Sarah privacy and room to work. But many of them were standing in the aisles trying to see what was happening. The airplane felt electric with tension as everyone realized they were about to witness something incredible. Sarah cried out as another strong contraction hit her. This one was different from all the others. She felt an overwhelming urge to push that she could not control. Her body was taking over and telling her exactly what to do. "I need to push," Sarah said urgently to Maria. "I can't stop it. The baby wants to come out right now." Maria nodded and positioned herself at the foot of the makeshift bed. "That's perfect, dear. Your body knows what to do. When the next contraction starts, I want you to push as hard as you can." But then Maria realized she had a problem. She had all the supplies they needed to catch the baby and keep everyone clean. But she had nothing to tie off the umbilical cord after the birth. In hospitals, they used special clamps, but there was nothing like that on an airplane. Maria looked around quickly at what was available. She needed something strong and clean that could be tied tightly around the umbilical cord. Her eyes fell on her feet and she had an idea that surprised everyone. Maria reached down and untied her left tennis shoe. She pulled out the long white shoelace and held it up to examine it closely. The lace was made of strong cotton and was perfectly clean. It would work exactly like the cord ties she had used when her grandchildren were born at home. "What are you doing with that?" Mike asked with confusion and worry in his voice. "We need to tie off the umbilical cord after the baby is born," Maria explained calmly. "This shoelace is clean and strong. It will work perfectly to stop the bleeding and keep your baby safe." Dr. Kim watched with amazement as Maria held up the shoelace. In all his medical training, no one had ever taught him that a shoelace could be used as medical equipment. But Maria's confidence made him trust that she knew what she was doing. Another contraction started and Sarah began pushing with all her strength. Maria could see the baby's head crowning and getting ready to emerge. "That's wonderful," she encouraged Sarah. "The head is coming. Keep pushing just like that." The entire airplane cabin fell completely silent except for the sound of the engines humming. Even the Johnson children had stopped talking as they sensed something important was happening. Passengers who had been reading or sleeping were now standing and watching with wide eyes. Sarah pushed again with the next contraction, and suddenly the baby's head slipped out into Maria's waiting hands. The tiny face was purple and wrinkled but perfectly formed. Maria gently turned the head to help the shoulders come through. "One more big push and your baby will be here," Maria told Sarah with excitement in her voice. Sarah gathered all her remaining strength and pushed harder than she ever had in her life. The baby's shoulders emerged, then the tiny body slipped out all at once into Maria's gentle hands. The airplane erupted in cheers and applause as passengers realized what they had just witnessed. But the baby was not crying yet. Maria quickly turned the tiny girl upside down and patted her back firmly. After a few seconds that felt like hours, the baby let out a loud, healthy cry that filled the entire cabin with joy. Maria immediately wrapped the baby in clean towels and laid her on Sarah's chest. "You have a beautiful little girl," Maria announced with tears in her eyes. "She is small, but she looks very healthy and strong." Sarah was sobbing with relief and amazement as she held her daughter for the first time. The baby was much smaller than normal because she was born 8 weeks early, but her lungs were working perfectly and she was moving her tiny arms and legs. Mike was crying too as he looked at his daughter. She had a full head of dark hair and tiny, perfect fingers. He could not believe this miracle had happened 30,000 feet above the ground, with no doctors or hospital equipment. Maria still had work to do. She needed to cut and tie the umbilical cord to separate the baby from her mother. Maria took her clean shoelace and carefully tied it around the cord about 2 inches from the baby's belly. She made sure the knot was very tight to stop all bleeding. Dr. Kim handed Maria a small scissors from the airplane's first aid kit. Maria cut the umbilical cord between the baby and the tie she had made with her shoelace. The baby was now completely separate and breathing on her own. The passengers gave another round of applause as they realized the delivery was complete. Maria sat back on her heels and smiled at the beautiful family she had helped bring together. She had delivered her 8th grandchild, even though this one was not related to her at all. "What will you name her?" Maria asked Sarah and Mike. "Emma," Sarah whispered as she looked at her tiny daughter. "We'll call her Emma Marie, and her middle name is for you." Baby Emma Marie Chen lay peacefully on her mother's chest, wrapped in soft airplane blankets. She was tiny at only 3 pounds, but her breathing was steady and strong. Her little fingers gripped Sarah's finger tightly as if she knew she was safe now. The crisis was over, but everyone on the plane was still amazed by what they had just witnessed. Maria Rodriguez sat quietly in a nearby seat, watching the new family with a gentle smile. Her job was finished, and she felt the deep satisfaction that came from helping bring new life into the world. Her shoelace, still tied around the cut umbilical cord, had become the most important piece of medical equipment on the entire airplane. Captain Williams had been in contact with Kansas City Airport during the entire birth. The control tower had cleared all other planes away and prepared the runway for an emergency landing. Ambulances and paramedics were already waiting on the ground with incubators and special equipment for premature babies. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking," came the announcement over the intercom. "I am happy to report that we have successfully welcomed a new passenger aboard Flight 447. Mother and baby are both doing well thanks to the incredible help from our passengers. We will be landing in Kansas City in about 15 minutes, where medical professionals are waiting to take care of our newest traveler." The passengers erupted in another round of applause and cheers. Many people were wiping tears from their eyes as they realized they had been part of something truly miraculous. David Walsh, the businessman who had been annoyed by the disruption, was now smiling and taking pictures of the beautiful family. Mrs. Johnson had finally been able to explain to her children what had happened. 5-year-old Tommy was fascinated by the idea of a baby being born on an airplane. 3-year-old Amy wanted to see the tiny baby, but was told she needed to stay in her seat until they landed. Dr. Kim felt proud that he had been able to help, even though Maria had done most of the real work. As a retired dentist, he never expected to be part of delivering a baby. But it had been the most meaningful experience of his medical career. Amy Foster, the nursing student, was already thinking about how this experience would help her in school. She had learned more about emergency births in 1 hour than she could have learned from months of textbooks. She asked Maria if she could stay in touch to learn more about midwifery. Linda Chen, the veterinarian, was impressed by how similar human birth was to animal birth. The same instincts and processes worked across all species. She felt honored to have been part of bringing Emma into the world. Jessica Martinez had worked for the airline for 12 years, but this was definitely the most unusual flight she had ever been on. She was already thinking about how to write the incident report. How do you explain that a passenger used her shoelace to deliver a baby at 30,000 feet? The plane began its descent toward Kansas City Airport. Sarah held Emma carefully as the aircraft tilted downward. The baby seemed completely unaware that she had been born in such an unusual place. She slept peacefully, occasionally making small sounds that melted everyone's hearts. Mike was still in shock over everything that had happened. When he woke up that morning, he thought he was just taking a normal flight to visit family. Now he was the father of a daughter who had been born in the sky with the help of a stranger who had become like family. The landing was smooth and gentle. Captain Williams had been flying for 25 years, but he had never been more careful with a landing than he was that day. As soon as the plane reached the gate, paramedics rushed on board with wheelchairs and medical equipment. The lead paramedic, Susan Martinez, quickly examined both Sarah and Emma. She was amazed by how healthy they both appeared. "Whoever delivered this baby did an excellent job," she told Maria. The umbilical cord was tied, perfectly and the baby shows no signs of distress. Sarah was carefully moved to a stretcher, while Emma was placed in a special transport incubator. The tiny baby looked even smaller surrounded by all the medical equipment, but her vital signs were strong and normal for a premature infant. As the paramedics prepared to take the family to the hospital, Sarah grabbed Maria's hand. "How can I ever thank you?" she said with tears streaming down her face. "You saved both of our lives today. I don't even know how to begin to repay you." Maria patted Sarah's hand gently. "Mija, you don't owe me anything. I only did what any grandmother would do. It was my honor to help bring your beautiful daughter into this world." The other passengers watched as Sarah, Mike, and baby Emma were taken off the plane by the medical team. Many people were crying as they realized they might never see the family again. But they would never forget being part of this incredible experience. Within hours, the story had spread across social media and news outlets around the world. "Baby born at 30,000 feet with help from grandmother's shoelace" became the headline in newspapers everywhere. Maria Rodriguez found herself being called a hero by reporters who wanted to interview her. But Maria was not interested in fame or attention. She quietly returned to her seat, picked up her romance novel, and continued reading as if nothing unusual had happened. When reporters called her later, she simply said, "I only did what needed to be done. Any mother or grandmother would have helped in that situation." At the hospital, doctors confirmed that baby Emma was healthy, despite being born 8 weeks early. She would need to stay in the neonatal intensive care unit for several weeks, but her prognosis was excellent. Sarah recovered quickly from the birth and was able to hold her daughter regularly. Every year on Emma's birthday, Sarah and Mike sent Maria a card with photos of their growing daughter. Maria kept every picture on her refrigerator, proud to have been part of Emma's dramatic entrance into the world. Emma grew up knowing the story of her unusual birth. She learned about the kind grandmother who had helped deliver her using nothing but love, experience, and a simple shoelace. Maria's shoelace was framed and hung in Emma's bedroom as a reminder that heroes can come from the most unexpected places. And somewhere in Phoenix, Maria Rodriguez still had that one tennis shoe with no shoelace, a reminder of the day an ordinary flight became an extraordinary miracle. The wheels of Flight 447 touched down on the runway at Kansas City International Airport exactly 45 minutes after baby Emma had been born. It was the smoothest landing Captain Williams had ever made in his 25-year career. He knew he was carrying the most precious cargo of his life and wanted everything to be perfect for the tiny passenger who had joined them in the sky. As soon as the plane reached the gate, the doors opened and a team of paramedics rushed on board. They moved quickly but gently towards Sarah and baby Emma, carrying special equipment designed for premature babies. The lead paramedic, Jennifer Walsh, had delivered many babies during her 15-year career, but never one who had been born on an airplane. "You did an incredible job," Jennifer told Maria as she examined the baby. "The umbilical cord was tied perfectly, and the baby shows no signs of distress. Whoever taught you to deliver babies knew exactly what they were doing." Maria smiled quietly as she watched the professionals take over. "I learned from my own mother and grandmother," she explained. "In my family, women helped each other when babies came. It was just the natural way of life." Baby Emma was carefully placed in a special transport incubator that would keep her warm and safe during the trip to the hospital. She looked even tinier surrounded by all the medical equipment, but her vital signs were strong and her breathing was steady. The paramedics were amazed by how healthy she appeared for a baby born 2 months early. Sarah was moved onto a stretcher, though she felt strong enough to walk. The paramedics explained that she needed to be examined at the hospital to make sure there were no complications from giving birth in such unusual circumstances. She held Maria's hand tightly as they prepared to leave the airplane. "I don't know how to thank you for what you did," Sarah said with tears in her eyes. "You saved both of our lives today. You are the most amazing person I have ever met." "Mija, you don't need to thank me," Maria replied gently. "I only did what any mother or grandmother would do. Your daughter chose to be born in the sky, and I was honored to help her make that journey safely." Mike walked beside his wife's stretcher, carrying the small bag of baby clothes they had packed for the hospital in Atlanta. None of the clothes would fit Emma because she was so small, but the hospital would have everything she needed. He was still trying to understand that he was now a father and that his daughter had been born with the help of a complete stranger who had become like family. The other passengers watched, From their seats as the Chen family was taken off the plane, many people were crying as they realized they had been part of something truly miraculous. David Walsh took pictures of Maria as she followed the family off the plane, wanting to remember the quiet hero who had delivered a baby with a shoelace. Dr. Robert Kim felt proud that he had been able to help, even though Maria had done the real work. He planned to call his own children and tell them about the most meaningful experience of his medical career. As a retired dentist, he never expected to be part of bringing new life into the world. Amy Foster, the nursing student, asked Maria for her phone number before they left the plane. She wanted to stay in touch and learn more about emergency childbirth. This experience had taught her more about nursing than months of classroom lectures ever could. Linda Chen, the veterinarian, was amazed by how similar human birth was to the animal births she helped with on farms. She felt honored to have been part of Emma's dramatic entrance into the world and planned to tell her own patients' owners about the importance of staying calm during emergencies. Jessica Martinez was already thinking about how to write her incident report. In 12 years of working for the airline, she had never experienced anything like this flight. She wanted to make sure Maria received proper recognition from the company for her heroic actions. At Kansas City Children's Hospital, baby Emma was taken directly to the neonatal intensive care unit. The doctors who examined her were impressed by her condition. Despite being born 8 weeks early in less than ideal circumstances, she was remarkably healthy and strong. Dr. Patricia Martinez, the head of the NICU, spoke with Sarah and Mike about Emma's care. "Your daughter is doing exceptionally well," she explained. "She will need to stay in the hospital for several weeks to gain weight and develop her lungs fully. But her prognosis is excellent." Within hours, the story had spread across social media and news websites around the world. "Baby born at 30,000 feet with grandmother's shoelace" became the headline that everyone was talking about. News reporters called the hospital asking to interview the family and the woman who had delivered the baby. But Maria Rodriguez had quietly returned to her connecting flight to continue her journey to visit her own grandchildren in Atlanta. When reporters finally tracked her down at her daughter's house, she was playing with her 2-year-old grandson in the backyard and seemed surprised by all the attention. "I don't understand why everyone is making such a big deal about this," Maria told the news reporter. "Any mother or grandmother would have done the same thing. Babies don't wait for convenient times to be born, and we just help them when they need us." The airline company gave Maria a lifetime of free flights and named her their passenger hero of the year. But Maria was more interested in the photos that Sarah and Mike sent her from the hospital showing Emma growing stronger every day. Emma spent 6 weeks in the NICU before she was finally big enough to go home. During that time, Sarah and Mike stayed in Kansas City and visited their daughter every day. They became friends with the nurses and doctors who took care of Emma, and everyone knew the story of the baby who was born in the sky. When Emma was finally released from the hospital, she weighed 5 pounds and was perfectly healthy. Sarah and Mike decided to stay in Kansas City for an extra week so they could visit Maria, who had flown back to meet the baby she had delivered. Maria held Emma gently in her arms and marveled at how much she had grown. "She is going to be a strong, determined woman," Maria predicted. "Any baby who chooses to be born on an airplane is not going to let anything stop her from achieving her dreams." Every year on Emma's birthday, Sarah and Mike sent Maria a card with new photos. Emma grew up knowing the story of her unusual birth and the kind stranger who had helped bring her into the world. Maria kept every photo on her refrigerator, proud to have been part of Emma's dramatic beginning. And in Emma's bedroom, hanging in a frame on the wall, was Maria's white shoelace that had been used to tie her umbilical cord. It served as a daily reminder that heroes can appear in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the simplest things can save lives. Maria Rodriguez returned to her quiet life in Phoenix, but she would always be remembered as the grandmother who delivered a baby at 30,000 feet, using nothing but love, experience, and a shoelace.